Hey guys, Bradbury here, and on today's episode, I'm joined by Nigel Crane, a chef turned founder of Essential Cuisine. He built his business from scratch and ultimately exited for £27 million. Nigel's going to share how a rejected idea became the spark for a high margin, scalable company that he grew to 8 figures in annual revenue, and also the steps he took to prepare the business and himself for a life-changing sale. So, with that said, good morning, Nigel. Tell us, how did your journey begin and what first pushed you towards entrepreneurship?
Good morning. Chef by trade, London-based, worked for Dorchester Hotel, Barclay, Intercontinental, did my work, did my job, did my grounding, and moved up to Cheshire in the 80s after leaving the Dorchester and started with RHM, Rankovic McDougall at the time. They had lots of brands out there. So you had Bisto, Paxo, Sharwoods, lots of brands, McDougall's, and I became their Blue Skies development chefs, which at the time felt like it was quite a lovely job. Playing with food. First job was making porridge. Not quite as excited as I had hoped for, but believe it or not, they couldn't even make porridge. So I made some porridge for them. A ready-made porridge, brown sugar. I just love it. Remembered it well. It was a bit of a eureka moment that I was working in a business that I could make a difference in taste and food for the masses. But I worked through RHM for 7 years, and they taught me sales, marketing, all the bits, unbeknown to me that I needed to start a business. And I was very, very interested in manufacturing. You'd find me in the Bisto factory, walking around, looking at machinery and looking at how the processes worked. That was one of my favorite things. I think as a chef, you have a hands-on take on work, and we're very creative, and my mind was sort of doing a little bit of overtime, but it was very important for me to understand how the processes work so that I could then put my little turn on all the products and make them better, which is basically what I did for 7 years. And I ended up as their innovations manager, which was quite a flashy title, but realized that without having a degree, without having been at university, I was a little bit in a hole. I was a little bit stuck. No real sort of elevation from that point on. So I would develop products every week, every month. And once a month, I'd go down to Windsor and I would present the new products to the directors, which again was rather interesting, if not slightly difficult, not difficult, but quite frightening. Quite frightening thing to go and stand in front of at least a dozen directors of RHM, big, massive corporate company, and show them new ideas. But it worked very well, and we got out many products, Bisto curry, chip shot curry sauce, those sort of things, and the Bisto Best was one of my favorites, and we did an advert on Bisto Best, and we had to pour the gravy, and they used a jig on the advert. And as they poured this gravy on the jig, I'm sitting there, unbeknownst to me, that I was actually in control of this TV advert. And I went, no, that doesn't look very good at all. Not very natural. Bang! They absolutely changed absolutely everything. Spent another day on pouring this gravy. And in the end, I did it myself, and they had me pouring the gravy on this dinner myself. It was brilliant. So it was about 2024 that I had the eureka moment, if you like. I think if everybody wants a business, or anybody always has a hankering to go and have their own business, it will happen one time or other if you have the need. And I say that really, the need is one thing, the idea is the other. The idea spurred me on, and a chicken stock and a fish stock. Very simply, chicken stock powder, which is just chicken stock powdered down. Technically, you could go into it for hours, but it's just a lovely powdered stock with the additions of yeasts and salts and peppers and seasonings to make it taste good. Anyway, this particular product has arrived on my desk one morning. I tasted it in hot water, and it was fabulous. It was fabulous. 2 weeks later, a fish stock turned up on my desk from a different supplier, and again, it was fabulous. It was just like I'd made it in the kitchen, which was, to be honest, one of the best things ever, but not cheap. So I then put together a little plan, put together some development work for Bisto, And I took it down dutifully one day to the directors in Windsor, and I presented the stocks for chefs. At which point they absolutely and utterly hated it, didn't like it at all, and it was in big pots. It was in 1 kilo pots, and bearing in mind Bisto just did little 70 gram pots of Bisto powder or whatever it was. For at the time it was probably for £1, and I was talking about £10 for a pot of this stock. So I then drove back to Cheshire in thought and a little bit excited that I thought, right, well, I've done my job. I've offered the idea to them, and I do hope I did offer the whole idea to them. I would hate to think they had the wrong idea. And I then started to think of what I can do with these products. So beef stock, fish stock, chicken stock, veg stock.
But it's so interesting, Nigel. Was it, I suppose, two-part question, and answering whatever order makes sense for you. Obviously, this was a real niche, and people often talk about scratching their own itch. Was it, was this gap, the product was renowned with chefs. Was it that you just saw that there was a gap in the market from yourself as a chef, just it wasn't there to be made? And I suppose related to that, was it product-driven first, and then the entrepreneurial thing came just because they rejected it, and then this opportunity presented itself? Or was it always an ambition one day to be an entrepreneur, and then it just so happened that it came about when this idea was rejected by your bosses, in effect?
Well, I think the entrepreneurial thing was always in me. But if I'd had a restaurant and been a chef, had a restaurant, I'd have gone bust massively. It would have just been a nightmare. Having worked with RHM for 7 years, I learned enough to understand business. But at the same time, within my chefing experience, the likes of Knorr, which were the main player, they had set the business. That's where the business was. They had products out there which weren't very good. Now, it wasn't so much they weren't very good. The taste of them weren't as good as we would like as chefs. So if I want to make a soup, or let's say a soup, and I use those products, I would know that I've used those products, which was the key. Okay, so when I had these products come along, the eureka moment was, there's the market's set. So there's a big market out there. Everybody's using these products. I use them many, many times. Even the top chefs use them every now and again. And I thought, well, I can make these much better. And because I'd been doing this development thing for 7 years, I knew how to manipulate these products into a manufactured product, which I could then sell. I think the pricing and everything else came in on the basis of you follow the dog. They were already there, and the pricing, as long as I was a little bit under their pricing, I was happy.
Interesting. So at what point did you actually make the leap, though? Because the idea was rejected. You obviously saw that there was a gap in the market. There was a potential here. There was a much better product. At what point do you make the leap? Did you moonlight and try and do both side by side?
Yeah. Well, you're asking a chef, so bit of moonlighting. I wasn't jumping before I got pushed or anything. No, I definitely designed all of those products in my own time at work. Worked all night, all day. I'd be in the kitchen until 8, 9 o'clock at night. Now, when you're working in a commercial business in grocery, everybody's gone home at 5. You don't work until that. So I was in there developing the labels, the design, the whole thing. So, and the product, more importantly, I got the products, and it was just the fish stock and chicken stock I based it on. And I made them, I organized all the ingredients, and I got them all delivered to a butcher's in town. And then I made them in a Hobart mixer. We just blend the mixer up all that. And then I went home and I packed them, and I put the lids on and the labels on and everything else. And then I had this, I don't know, dozen or so, maybe 24 pots of fish stock, 24 pots of chicken stock, fish stock, chicken stock. And I went out and I started to hawk them around the businesses to see if it worked.
Amazing. And at what point did you realize that it had momentum? At what point did you realize
I think pretty much just immediately that there was an opportunity here because of my ability to have the taste profiles. I've got a king palate, and a king palate is one
which
where
is helpful. It's helpful.
It's very, very helpful to have a king palate, and these tastes were so pure and wonderful. I knew that there was an opportunity. So once I'd done the little bit with the veg stock and the fish stock and the chicken stock, which, by the way, I actually got some business down in London at a fishmonger's in London. One of my friends, he used a lot of my friends, by the way, in London, the chefs down there. And there was a fishmonger's in the Elephant and Castle. And he made an order for 4 boxes. So that's 6s, so 4 boxes, 24 pots. Marvellous, very exciting. However, no idea how to get it there. Not like the modern day anymore. And I got in my car after work and I drove down to the Elephant and Castle from Cheshire, delivered my stock, got back about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, went to bed, got back up and went back to work. And that's how it sort of worked for a while.
Timeline, when was this, Nigel?
Oh, so sort of 1994.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, amazing, huh? So really, you're in that position. Okay, afterwards, I found that there was Amtrak and all those people who would do it for a price, and you just added that price to wherever you were. But and again, it all sort of fitted. But those were the sort of times when I thought, okay, now this is working. I need to get the beef and the veg stock made. So I made them. And the name, I was sitting in a hospital waiting room for whatever reason. It wasn't for me. It was, but I was waiting in the hospital room. And I was thinking, right, name for this business. Bearing in mind, I worked for Anton Mosimann. And he was a unbelievable superstar in the way of chefing. And he had Essential Mosimann. He had all sorts of these names, natural cuisine and everything else. And I'm thinking, all right. And I'd already started to sketch out a logo for myself, which had a chef's hat on it and a banner, Essential Cuisine, all very, very amateurish, but it worked for me. And then I looked at Anton's artwork, and he had a chef's hat and he had a pencil. I was thinking, oh, this is getting too close. But I sat there and I thought, right, kitchen stocks, blimey, where are we going to go with this cuisine? It sounded a bit French to me. Cuisine stocks. Cuisine, something essence. They're an essence, aren't they? They're an essence. That's a stock. It's a fond. I was going through all these different nage is a French for a little sauce, and I went right. Okay, essence, essential. Oh, that's nice. I like that. Essential kitchen. Now that's a bit of a mixture. Essential cuisine. That's where it came from, and that was it. Bang! Thank you, Eureka. Thank you, Essential Cuisine, and made the name. So that's another marvelous time in my life to actually put that there. And it was only when we got right down the line and my partner, my new partner, when we moved him in, said, right, we need to go and see a design agency. Let's sort that out. At which point I thought that's quite nice.
Well, fast forwarders in the journey, I think it was, I think it wasn't all the way up till I believe about 2018 when you had the exit. But at what rate did the company scale? Because obviously in the early days, you were doing it literally all yourself, working every hour, God sends, and then ultimately you built a big entity exit. Was it a steady, consistent growth? Was it rapid growth and then it plateaued, or was it a slow, painful and then it?
Yeah. So you have the pain. You have the pain in there. I think first 4 or 5 years. Sorry, first 4 years I got to £200,000. That's how painful it is in its own way. Now you think of that. When I was there, it was marvelous. It was absolutely spot on. Whoever I had as my people I looked up to, they had that sort of turnover, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. That's who I wanted to be like. But that was the point. Then we started to grow, and then we started to need to reorganize. And I brought in a very good friend of mine, Neil Corlett, who was senior marketing manager at McDougall's. So I knew him, and I've always entertained people I know. So when they talk about partners, quite important that you get the right partner. Very fraught. But if you know them, you've got half a chance. And brought him in, and from that point, we then started to grow in the same way. So the 200,000 in 4 years was a good growth. But from that point, we then started to grow double digits year on year for the next term, all the way up to 2018.
Interesting. And kind of your kind of broader sector is notoriously tough, notoriously capital intensive. How did you fund all this? Was it from savings? Did you take on debt?
Initial stuff, small stuff. £30,000 from my father, who unfortunately died, and left us a lump sum each. And I used that wisely to buy my stocks. Then you get to the next stage where we want to get a unit. So we rent the unit, so that's fine, not a problem. But when you then started to get to growth, we used a loophole in the pension plan at the time, 2005. Yeah, 2005. And that gave us 75% of the value of our joint pensions,
Wow.
which we could borrow. It's got closed now. You can't do that anymore. And for that, we went across the road from where this little tiny 18 bay warehouse was, and we built ourselves a nice big office and warehousing facility and kitchen. And that's where we then developed all our products.
Interesting. And where in this journey did you start thinking seriously about exit? Was it always a part of the end game, or was it no? You were just focused on the business, growing
Yeah.
the business, being passionate about this product, and then at some point you then just viewed it differently.
Yeah, I think when you're in the business, you're enjoying the business. There is no thoughts of exit at all. No thoughts of exit. You're about 55, 54. It really isn't one of those where I had it in my mind, and I knew that my partner, one of my partners, Neil, he didn't have it in his mind either. So I felt quite comfortable with carrying through the business, growing all the time, getting bigger, getting more corporate. Not quite sure I enjoyed the meetings as much, because they were getting a little bit long, sometimes 6-7 hours, and it was just too long. It was all too much. But Neil unfortunately became poorly, and he had 6 or 7 weeks off, came back. I said, well, where's the 5-year plan, Neil? We need to crack on because we're a bit behind and we need to really start to strategize for the next time. He said, now I've got an idea. And it was him who wanted to, I think he had a realization. He had an epiphany. He just went, no, I'm not quite sure I liked what's just happened to himself. And he said, no, I think we should think about selling. And at the time,
what kind of size was the business at the time in terms of revenues or employees?
so that would have been in 2015. 2015. It's guesswork, but 7-8 million turnover.
Yes.
So it's 7-8 million turnover, and bearing in mind you're growing double digits every year, you're looking at those figures as being, yeah, okay. We were always good with the figures. The figures were there, but the stretch always worked. So we'd put in the good, cold, and conservative figures, and then we'd always achieve the stretch, which was marvelous. It was amazing, but we knew we had confidence in that. I had no idea how to sell a company.
Right.
And once again, Neil, very much the driving force behind the marketing and everything else, also had a very good friend of his, Nick Moss, who I knew very well from RHM days. He was their chief accountant. He was their director, their full-on CEO type. And he had been selling and buying all sorts of businesses within RHM, Just Juice and everybody else. And he came in and he offered his services, and he got hold of Cowgirls and they put the plan together.
Interesting.
And that's how that works. So now I see it. Now I've been through it. Oh, well, that's how it works. That's very interesting. Yeah.
So obviously your business partner hadn't been very well, came back and said 2015 and goes, we should consider exiting this. So you then went and got some help from somebody that from RHM, accountant who'd done this process before, kind of got a bit of a plan together.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you needed to do before going out to market and actually trying to get bids? Was there any part where you tried to replace yourself or things that you felt had to get in place?
So you got the full hit now. So now we're talking about exit. Now we have a plan. So the plan's put together. You now need a management team, and the management team is going to run your business. But you can't tell the management team you're selling, because that's not quite how it works. So you have to get the management team together, which we did. We got 8 of our current managers together, and unbeknownst to them, we then started to manage them into a team that would literally run the business without us being there. And we would do that from time to time, just disappear for a while, manage. They would still manage, and then we knew that we were on the right lines. So that was the first step.
Very good. And how long a period was that? Because you come up with the idea, but obviously you can't.
Yeah, that was probably two years.
Right.
So from 15 onwards to 18 when we sold, within that term, 15, 16, 17 was the key time where we put that together. And
then how did you approach potential buyers? Did you come up with a specific hit list?
Yeah. So there's the reason for bringing in the Cowgirls of the world, the ones who put together the sales strategy. And then they present you the sales strategy. And then they tell you, well, these are the people we're going to sell to, or these are the people we're going to approach, which again it's interesting because all of a sudden you're starting to deal with Nestle and Kerry, and you're talking about huge businesses, massive, huge businesses. And I'm getting quite excited thinking, oh, this is interesting. We're now going out to a market, and they basically give you a document, lovely glossy document. And in the document is this list of all these people that we have an opportunity to sell to. But it also gives you history within your sector, which is the grocery sector, food service, of historic sales, which is interesting. And from the historic sales, and Nick Moss, who did his own strategic plan for the sale, and they gave it to us as well. They're looking at 6 to 7.5% time multiplier on our EBITDA. So we're going 6 to 7%, 15 million on a 2.5 EBITDA, and we're all going, right, okay, well, that's good, that's great, we love that, that's really nice, that's smashing, well done, thank you very much. Everybody could work within the figures. Okay, that's when it started to go to a point that I then started questioning Neil. That I said, I think this business is worth a lot more than that, Neil. I said, it's just set up in a way that we've got it with a great team, a great business, great food, great product, and it can be sized, which is a real key. I said, I think this is really very attractive, and he just went, yeah, no, okay, fair enough. Bearing in mind, Nick Moss had done a good deal, by the way. So he'd done a deal on 6 to 7.5 on a multiplier. Anything over and above, he got an extra percent. In the time we're sitting there, we're comfortable, we're happy, we've got the whole process. We are now getting towards launching the business for sale. So it wasn't for sale at the time. You plan it all within your structure. And then we'll get into a point in 2017, end of 2017, where we then said, right, now we're ready. We've done all the work. We've got all the process together. We've got the figures. We need to now go out to buyers, prospective buyers. And basically, the team actually then just put out a little teaser. So they put a teaser out there so they know what we're doing. At that time, we have to tell our team. So our team now get together and we then give them shares. So we give them shares options within the business and say, this is what we're going to do. But obviously, you are being signed up to secrecy, so nobody else must know. You're the only ones who know, but we're signing you up to this, and we're going to give you some shares of the sales and blah, blah, blah. We did the little teaser. That went okay. Really, we didn't get so much feedback from that. But in the meantime, we got a call from Selena, who were a French manufacturing business, very similar to what we did, but they're blending. They've got multiple businesses within France and some in England, blending and processing. They didn't have any catering distribution, so they were seeing us as being, this is a very interesting business. They liked the figures and they asked if they could come in privately and under the cover of darkness. It was real sort of like really good. If they weren't French, they'd have been Russian. And we said, yeah, okay. I said, not quite sure what's going on here, but that's great. Why not? And a chap called Eric came to see us with his financial man. And it was about 8:00 at night. So we opened up the factory. We opened up the offices and walked into the factory. And this Eric said, do you do anything here? I said, I'm not sure. I'm not with you. He says, too clean, too nice, too tidy, which is what my whole meant. That's my whole ethos was. This factory was like my kitchen. And as a pro chef, your kitchen is perfect. It's lovely. It's all clean, tidy, nothing wrong. The staff knew if I walked around and I was walking around, if there's anything out of place, dirty, mucky, a piece of litter, whose is that? Pick it up. Don't leave it. Just go. And they knew what I was at. So he questioned that we didn't look as though we were doing any business. Secondly, how do you make the margins you make? Because we're not used to these margins. And I said, well, it's very much your margins is run by the market and being quite shrewd about what we do and how we do it. And so he looked around, he had a nice time. And then as we were leaving, the accountant came up to me and said, Eric likes this business. And I went, okay. What do you mean? He says, no. He says he likes the business means he'd like to buy the business. I went, oh. I said, well, that's very interesting. I was still very laid back. Okay, really? Oh, fine. Don't know quite what that means. The powers to be got involved. The big boys got involved and said, if you want to put an offer into this business because it hasn't been on the market, you need to give us a knockout blow. Now, bearing in mind, we were looking at 6 to 7 times multiplier on our 2.55 EBITDA. They came in with 27 million.
Wow.
Now, Neil told me to sit down when he was going to tell me, so that was great. Thank you very much. And he told me, and I went, oh my gosh, really? Fantastic. I told you, didn't I? I told you this business was worth more than you thought it was. I said, well, I've got a bit of a problem. I said, Nick Moss. I said, he's done a deal on 6.5 or 7, and he's getting a percentage of the rest of it as a bigger percentage. I said, he's done us writing. And Neil said, listen, Nigel, he says, are we happy? I said, yes, we are. Would we have got to where we were without him? No. Then crack on. He says, it's all good. And that's the sort of thing you learn. It's all good, whatever you're having. And we're in a fantastic position. So we shook hands. We shook hands with Eric and said, no, we agree to that. We need to come over to France and we need to sign up and do the deal. And we arranged that for, say, the following week. It was very quick. Very quick. It really was. He came over and then we were planning to go back over to France the following week. And Kerry came in, and I think I mentioned Kerry before, one of the big boys. Very, very upset. Absolutely beside themselves because they'd got the teaser. They knew we were for sale, and all of a sudden we're not on the market anymore. And the powers to be, the cowgirls of the world, said, well, if you want, and we appreciate what you're saying, but you're going to have to come in with a knockout blow if you want to buy this business. And they came in with 30 million. And I went, so Neil came and told me this, and I went, right, 30 million. I said, give me a few minutes. I need a bit of time to come and think about this. So he left me, and I thought to myself, well, when you get into these sales, there's a lot to be said of your setup and how your business works and the gremlins within your business. Now, the gremlins are the bits where it's not quite what you're saying. You're not getting quite the margins. You're not doing this. There's a lawsuit. There's this, there's that. We had a absolutely perfectly set up business with nothing hidden in the closet. But I still felt that Kerry had a reputation of being quite hard, and they're Irish. Not that I want to put that in there. Take that out there. But anyway, they had a bit of a reputation of being a bit hard. And I felt that even if they had offered me 30 million, by the time I'd done the deal, it'd have been back down to 27. That's how I felt.
Right.
Yeah. So you're not benefiting any way whatsoever. I've just done a gentleman's agreement at that point anyway, which is it's still a great story. I've shaken hands on 27 million. It's brilliant. I love it. Just shaking hands. And I went back to Neil and I says, no, not interested, mate. Not interested. Gave him my theory. He agreed and we cracked on.
Fascinating. Well, what I love about this, Nigel, is it's listeners to the podcast have heard me talk about the rule of 2.5, which is a thing in the M&A world, which says if you go out to market and get multiple bids, if you get 5 bids, say sealed bids, the high bid will be 2.5 times the low bid. Like the spread can be absolutely massive.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it's just a perfect example of that. As in the industry average multiplier, you were going in thinking circa 15 million. And then you went out and you found 2 bids that were double that, effectively. And it's also interesting to me that you didn't go for the highest bid because you felt, and correct me if I'm misspeaking here, but you felt that it wouldn't have been as good. Either it would have been chipped away in due diligence, or the other terms they might have put on you might not have been as attractive. So actually the lower bid, still significantly higher than your original idea, the lower bid was actually the one that you went with. What do you think drove such a high valuation? That's probably the question. So in your opinion, what carried the weight? Because versus the average for your sector and what the advice you'd got on it, you're so far above that, double effectively. What do you think it was about the business that caused it to carry weight? Was it the timing of the market? Was it that you had a unique opportunity to scale? What were the key drivers of that significant valuation?
I think on that key driver, I can only say within a business, the margin is a super margin. But within our business, within grocery business, you don't get that margin. You're probably down, and you just don't get it. And it was all to do with Nor. It was all to do with the market. Nestle and Knorr set the margins because they have to. That's their game. We didn't necessarily have to do that, but we did. We played the game. We worked very closely with their increases. But basically, what it showed was that our margins, and we were getting upwards of 70% gross sometimes on products. But that was development, you see. This is the key to genius development. Can't remember who that was. Oh, that was me. And it was great development to achieve a product that we could then get into a market which was already there, but price-wise, it suited us brilliantly.
It's so
Absolutely
rare. I just want to dive in there, Nigel. And I don't know your world, so I'm not pretending to. But anecdotally, I kind of go, you referenced if you had a restaurant, you would have gone broke. And I believe that restaurateurs as an industry have got the unique privilege of being the number one most likely industry that's going to business going to fail if you start in that sector. Mm-hmm. And it's because the cliche is that the chefs passionate about the food, but they've got no clue about margins. So they get the highest quality food, but then they can't make any money at it.
Yeah. So again, this is very much led by Neil as well. When we got together, minimum margin 34% to run a business was always his mantra. And he said, now look, we'll go and see a business. And we used to own a soup company up in Hexham, and we would go up there, and their margins were skinny. They weren't as good. Probably about 25%. He said, now, Nigel, look at the factory, look at the offices, look at the furniture, look at the computers. He says, that is a business that runs on 25% margin. He said, now come and look at Essential Cuisine. This is a company that works on 70. It was an average 54%, by the way, which was, what happens is if you can get into that sector, that's the difference. So the attractiveness was, we were successful. We had a great margin, but we had great products. We had absolutely fantastic products. Not sure Selena were appreciating our products as such. What they appreciated was we were in a market that they weren't in, and they were absolutely taken back by the success of such a, if you like, small company. I say that because they were turning over 450 million.
Wow. Yeah. So it's almost interesting. So I'm guessing they're after market penetration then, in the sense of that they saw you going, 8 million or whatever the top line revenue was, and they just looked at it and thought, well, if they're doing 8 million and we put our
so by the time they came to buy us, we were 12 million.
Okay.
So,
and interestingly, I suppose that teased me up. Actually, no, let's do it chronologically. So tell me about what it felt like, Nigel. So you've built this business over a long period of time. You get suggested that the price point's going to be the kind of mid-teens millions. You basically get two offers that are double that, which is a life-changing amount of money. What was your experience like of the actual closing process? So what did it feel like when the deal closed, when the money hit the bank account? What was
So that's somehow a damp squib, if you like. I think I was more enthused about going to Paris or France to do the deal. That was great because you had some nice food and we had a really nice time, shook hands. But the deal actually only gets done by the accountants, the solicitors back in Manchester. So we then get invited up to the financial sector in Manchester, and we come into this room, and basically the table is just full of documents. And you're signing these documents, and you're going, oh, they are right. And we do all the document signing, and that's it. So I remember the pictures, actually. We all shook hands in this room, and we all had a group picture taken. This is not the French. This is just us.
Yeah, it's just all the people that you're paying to help you do the deal.
We're just helping. Yeah, the people who are doing the deal, and we're just shaking their hands. We all have a nice time. Lovely. And went out for lunch.
I was going to say that they wanted a picture because you just paid for the extension on their house.
Exactly. Oh, they definitely did. So they were very happy with us. And we went out for lunch. And as we were going out for lunch, I said to my partners, "It's your round. You're paying for lunch." And that was it. So we had I think I was happier being able to screenshot my wife, who was in Portugal at the time, on one of our holidays that I couldn't go on because I'm signing these documents. And I screenshotted. I screenshotted a £9.25 million in the bank account,
Right.
Now, I think that was more like, that is it. It's there. I love it. That's great. We've done it. We've done it. The other key to the business was that I was free. There was no clauses,
Wow.
no need to pay back for a year or 2 years or whatever. I did stay for 6 months because they asked me to, but that was absolutely no need because the team was so well trained that I didn't even ask me a question. I just sat there in my little ivory tower doing nothing. I was on the telephone. I was on the computer.
Just looking at your bank statement.
I was just looking at my bank statement, thinking, "What am I going to do with that?" Yeah, yeah. Which
Well,
is just another story, totally.
yeah, well, actually, it's funny. The most common answer I get when I ask people, Nigel, about their exits is often, I want people to hear the truth, which is normally there's a momentary, well, this is brilliant,
Yes.
and then there's a period of like, oh, right, okay, kind of
Yeah.
deflationary or on track. So what I want to ask about what happens to the business afterwards, because often that can be
Yeah.
ugly. But first, what did you do anything to treat yourself? I mean, I suppose I know the answer, but you may
Yeah.
choose to share or not share. What? So getting the money's nice, but it's what you do with that money. Was there any way that you and your wife rewarded yourself for all those years of hard work?
All the sacrifice. We went out very frugally. We bought some watches. We went on a cruise. So we bought some watches, bit of jewelry. We ended up in Mauritius and Dubai for a couple of weeks on holiday. And again, got a bit of jewelry. And Sonia, my wife, she's got a lot more jewelry. I don't have any jewelry. And then you try to insure the jewelry and you go, no, I'm not doing that. And it's all that. Well, what you do is when you started from nothing and you built your business, you're still the same person. You never change. Doesn't matter what money you have. We're still the same. We don't do much really. And therefore we then get involved with what do you do with that? And we invested it. We put it all in the shares and stocks and doing and everything else. And then as it's gone on and the time's gone on because COVID came in and Brexit came in. So in all those years, we're going, right, we're sitting on this money. What are we going to do? Oh, I bought a nice Range Rover. Yes, that was nice. Sonia got a nice Range Rover. And that's about it then. But more recently, we've built a new house. So we built a nice new house, big complex, and used all the money. Yes.
Right.
So I'm starting again.
Well, you don't lose the entrepreneurial drive. I had a client exit earlier this year, and he said, "No, I'm done. Me and my wife are done. We're done." I give him 6 months. He's right at the 6 months mark. Funnily enough, I'm seeing him next week, Nigel, at my event. You'll know that I'm talking about. Then this will be released after that event, so I'm going to make a bet at that event. He tells me. He tells me that he's got an idea. That's my guess. So, how did you feel about how is the business done afterwards? Because often, businesses, the acquirers somehow messes it up. Sometimes it scales. So, how is the business done under Selena? And I suppose, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. So, firstly, all the staff wanted it to fail and me buy it back for £1. They'd love to have done that because that was the whole point of Essential, the family. But because of the way we set it, as we said before, the management team, that would be very difficult to destroy, very difficult to break up. So they worked well, but Selena bought in 2 managers. No disrespect to them, but they had a very hard corporate image to be portrayed, and they really destroyed the whole place in its own way. The morale and everything else went down, but the business still thrived because the business was still set up to thrive. We could have stayed in that business and been turning over 30, 40 million, but it would have been that corporate thing that we're making all these changes. Essential now, I think at the last time I spoke to them, about 22 million turnover. They've gone through a whole change of the management who came in to then manage the team I'd put in, then they just decided in their wisdom after a while that really wasn't making much difference at all or anything. In fact, it was probably damaging the business. They moved them off to Europe somewhere, and my team has taken back over control, and they're just cracking on. So they're just growing the same sort of digits because it does get to big figures. It does get to meaty figures. Once you say double digits on meaty figures, yeah, those meaty figures become very big. I was looking at some of my figures today just for the podcast, and we are looking at 7. When we get into the 7 million, the next year was 9.5. So the 9.5, then the next year turns into 11 point or 12 point. And if you imagine that, very quickly, it would then move to 20 million, whatever.
Yeah, massive, massive. So final couple of questions from me, Nigel. I want to be respectful of your time, but what's next? You've achieved most people's biggest dream. You've had this big, massive exit. It was, you got a large lump of cash. It wasn't dependent on you. You weren't tied into the business. You built, you built a house. What's next for you?
Some sort of genius investments being made in the meantime of the 7 years, which will come to fruition at some time in the near future. And off we go again. No idea what I would ever do. I don't think I certainly wouldn't want to start another Essential Cuisine, but there's always opportunities just to have a bit of fun. Yeah. It's fun money. It's not serious. I'm very happy with where I am. I play golf. I have a nice time. I'm chairman of the golf club. You do these sort of things, and do I want to tie myself into another business? Not necessarily. Would I invest in somebody else? Possibly. I've got friends around who I think have got the ability to have a nice business if they have the drive and the understanding of what the needs are. I sound really corporate, don't I?
Yeah, right. Well, I suppose the final question for me is, if somebody listening to this, so if you mentioned somebody that would like to achieve an exit downstream, not necessarily immediately, but they're kind of going, you know what, great, I'd love to achieve what you've achieved, Nigel. What are the top 2 or 3 things you'd encourage them to think about, emphasize? It could be repeating something you've already said, underlining it, or it could be something else. What are the kind of top 2 or 3 takeaways that you'd suggest they consider?
Yeah, so strategic plan. That, it has to be a strategic plan. Otherwise, we're not going anywhere. You have to be showing, if you want to sell your business, you've got to show the buyer that you are serious about your business. It's not just, I've seen businesses sell just knee-jerk reaction with selling. They haven't organized anything. They're the ones who get into trouble with the sale. Plan it with good time. It takes time. Put your management team in. That's the second one. So your management team, if you put your management team in, if you don't want to carry on in your business.
Yeah, very good.
If you want to carry on in your business for the next 5 years working for somebody else, then you don't plan. You just but what that means is that you're the only one running the business. Get your management team in unless you want to carry on in your business working for somebody else for the next 5 years. Could be. And that is, I have never seen anybody in that situation enjoy themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen it happen, but they've never enjoyed themselves because the new owners will do with whatever they want to do with you, and it's not necessarily what you want to do or how you run the business. So if you want a big management team, bang, get it done. Make sure they're working to your format, and they can do everything you can do. So I'm very keen on delegating, and don't keep everything to yourself. Make sure you're happy with what they're doing and how they're doing it, and go away for 2 weeks and prove it that they can handle it without you getting on the phone all the time. So those 2 are really key. Yeah, have confidence in your business. Always sell. It's quality. There's 3 or 4 things I love. Is you have to have quality. If you've got quality, then you've got a business. If you've got your margin, good margin, you've got a business. And then if you've got a good team, and my team of people around me, every single one of them, family, beautiful. Not my family, of course, but my Essential Cuisine family. Shook hands with them every day, knew all their names. I treated them just as they should be treated. And I think by doing that, they will then work for you in a so much better way. Key to having a great business.
Beautiful. Well, lovely way to end, Nigel. Finally, if anybody wants to get in touch or find out more about you, you might say, bugger off now, I'm playing golf. How can people find out more about you or get in touch if they want to learn more?
I'm online every now and again. It's always there. The history is always there. Nigel Crane, chef, tends to just throw up whatever it throws up. International superstar chef. No, not really at all. Just somebody who's got a history, and that's the way to put it in there, really. I'm on Facebook. I'm on wherever. I don't really go out there to be noticed. I'm just there. If people want to talk to me, I love mentoring. and I don't mentor for money. I just mentor. And the reason for that is if I make a mistake, they can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And I love helping people if they care for it. If they don't, then it's not a problem. Yeah. I never think of myself as being, oh, look, I'm the best at this. I just think I've got enough experience to be able to maybe help, which is, I think, the way the world goes round. So give it back for me. That's the way forward.
Well, Nigel, I've really enjoyed this conversation. So, Nigel Crane, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dan. Been a pleasure.